flag salute with Mr. Rosario.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Amendola.
Here.
Mr. Kraus.
Here.
Ms. Perry. Ms. Glasser.
Here.
Ms. Stamets.
Here.
Mr. Rosario.
Here.
Mr. Lavasser.
Here.
Mayor Bloom.
Here.
Solicitor Corbel.
Here.
And Public Works Director Kazarowski.
Present.
All right. Citizens' comments. Road. And down. Would, Ms. Oh, sorry. Moving forward with approval of the bills dated May 13, 2019.
So moved.
I second it.
Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, approval of the bill list. Moving forward with approval of the minutes dated April 22nd, 2019.
So moved.
Right here, second.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have approval of the minutes. Now I'm jumping to the right section here. Citizen comments. We have Nancy Volker, 44th Thomas, about road, and we do have subjects on the agenda about the road program, so. All right.
You might just want to hold it.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Nancy Barker, 44 Thomas Street. My name is spelled Voelker. And I came to make a request for a couple of issues on Thomas Street. Several years ago, there were some utility lines that were being worked on the street. And one of the issues at that time, it has never been corrected, is at the corner of Thomas and Hewitt is the handicap ramp deal in the sidewalk. And the street was never paved to that. There's a big area right there that you couldn't get a wheelchair for down there if you tried. Fills with water whenever it rains, and it needs to be addressed. I believe it's several years now. Nobody's noticed it apparently. Also, just a little ways up from that, on Thomas, same side of the street, in front of Hutch Towing, there was a water main break a while back, and they repaired it, replaced the sidewalk that was broken, and they left a mess around the fire plug, where they never filled in the dirt. So someone walking there can easily just turn an ankle if they misstep. That really should be looked at. And the only other comment that I have is regarding also the roads. The repair that was done on Hawthorne. I just want to let you know it's horrible. I've never seen such a bad job anywhere on repair of potholes and road. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Brad, could you talk to the microphone? Sure. Lower it a little bit.
When you get back in front of an actual microphone, is that part of what the gas company is supposed to be
Yeah,
working on?
Hawthorne was actually on the 2018 resurfacing program. That's when we met the gas company. They come in and did major work with the service lines and the main lines. That's under, actually our contractor who had it initially on his quote when he made his bid for the 2018 road program. Was working with the engineer to come back and actually do that as part of his bid from 2018. So that road itself will be totally resurfaced. Those are temporary patches on Hawthorne. Those-
Temporary for a couple of years.
No, just last year. last fall.
So when will it be repaid then?
We paid this spring, this time. Again, last year again, it was on our paving program. We wanted that whole street done.
Mhm.
Gas company working with manager's office and public works office, we meet and discuss our road program. They said they had a project going in there. So obviously, we're not gonna pave it and have them come up and dig it up.
I understand.
So part of our co-op agreement is they're gonna come in and pay for their portion of the road that they have torn up, which is approximately half of Hawthorne, and we'll pay for the other half. So really, everybody wins, the gas company wins, they pay for their half, we pay for our half, and the residents get a new street. That's temporary patching, that wasn't complete. Oh, it's rough,
Certainly glad of that.
it's rough.
because
I just look at it as temporary speed bumps at this point. It will be restored back, brand new condition. As soon as we work that out with our engineer, our contractor from last year, and if need be, it'll be the contract this year, we'll have it added on, because the money and funds are in the budget.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Kramer?
That's not on this.
All right, they'll have to wait till the end. Agenda. Carnell?
It's just saying 4 minutes.
No. All right, that, Mr. Sava, your comments will have to wait to the end as well. All right, moving forward to the President's report. This Thursday, there's the COG dinner. The deadline for council to reply, I believe, was last week, but I'm just going to take one more call to see if there's anybody that's interested. I'll be out of town. Public Works Director Kazarowski and Chief of Police Sumter is going, and Solicitor Corbel is going. So if there's anybody else that'd like to go, say so now. If not, then we're past the deadline, but I know they usually work with us, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. And in addition, we have an important motion on the table on the business agenda, and that's regarding the shade tree ordinance. As we go into the spring season and the trees leave out, and with many shade trees, our shade tree population is aging, and it's important that we look at the succession plan for those shade trees and how we're going to keep up with them. We are going into, I believe, a 31 year of the shade tree.
It's in Tree City.
Tree City, you
Yeah,
said?
this is the 30th year
30th.
of our designation as a Tree City.
So that's an important motion. There's some gray area in our ordinances. This cleans it up, makes it concurrent with the Borough Code. So I do appreciate everybody's attention, and I appreciate the manager's office and the Shade Tree Commission for working with the manager to move this forward. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm moving on to the mayor's report.
Thank you. Just 2.5 items. On Sunday, May 5th, we dedicated the Henry Louis Hufnagel Memorial outside of the Borough Building. Henry Louis Hufnagel was a patrolman with the Crafton Police Department back in the early 1900s. It was murdered on Sterrett Street on September 8th, 1919. So we have a memorial out there now on the outside of the building. The members of, former members of Crafton Council were there. The Crafton Rotary, the American Legion came down and did a salute to Officer Hufnagel. But what bothered me was that there was nobody from council. This council was at that dedication. And there were 3 former members of council there, but none from this council. That kind of bothered me. But the dedication took about 20 minutes, and we got done and got pictures, and Representative Deasy was there, and the mayor from Roslyn Farms. So it went off well. And so if anybody's interested, the memorial, the plaque, or the stone is right on the side of the Borough Building, closer to the building than the Center Memorial. And with that in mind, Chief Sumter and I issued a certificate of award to Sergeant Timothy Harbison, the police department. Tim did a lot of work, spent a lot of time and energy to get this program off the ground. He discovered the facts, took the information that he received about the death of Officer Huffnagel, and he went forward with it, and he dedicated a lot of time and effort to getting community involvement from the Rotary, Crafton Giant Eagle, and getting monetary support so this thing could get off the ground. And it's over there now, and the chief and I gave him a certificate, which will be placed in his permanent file for the work that he did, and he was commended for the job that he did. And one other thing that I have, and this is a real short item, is that I've been trying to get the parking ordinance changed for Johnson Street for one-side parking, and in the period of time since the request is made and now, let another vehicle sideswiped on the street and damaged. And I'm hoping that this ordinance gets passed so we can, I believe that Public Works has already ordered the signs and
They're in and ready to go.
they're in and ready to go. So I'd like, the house would kind of like to.
It's advertised for next week,
Next week.
or, excuse me, next meeting, 2 weeks from now.
Okay, but this was 2 months ago.
Oh, yes.
And it hasn't been advertised, and it should have been taken care of by now. Okay, so we can legally get the signs up on the street. I know there's other issues with West Crafton Avenue and all that. And in fact, my wife was accosted at church on Sunday about the proposed parking changes for West Crafton Avenue, but that's another issue for another time. That's all I have, thank you.
Manager Susko, so to address the mayor's concerns, is everything gonna be, is everything bundled together?
Yes.
Or can we advertise each of those?
Well, so they've already been advertised.
Okay,
Yes.
so they were advertised.
Yes, we originally were, I guess bundling is probably the right word. The Johnston Street one-side parking, the portion of West Crafton Avenue that is the hill, and then a piece between the intersection of Broadhead and Crenell, and basically between that and I think it's the Service King, the auto body shop that's right there. And then that was also going to include the consideration of East Crafton Avenue being made one lane with angled parking. So what was kind of holding us up there was the East Crafton Avenue issue. Now, we've since checked in with Gateway on that and determined that the street, due to recent regulations passed basically within the last couple of years at the state, you have to have an entire lane in which you can just back a car out of angled parking onto the street. So because that street is not wide enough, it looks like that's not going to be an option. However, once you figured that out, I said go ahead and break off the other parking changes basically. Oh, and also the stop sign at Harrison, Clearview, that the resident requested a couple meetings ago is also in there. So it just got held up a little bit because I think we were trying to do a lot of streets at once. But I believe it already, the ad ran, maybe I want to say last week.
Yeah, it's right.
The solicitor did place it, and so it's advertised for consideration at the 29th meeting, which by the way is the Wednesday after Memorial Day, since normally our meeting would be on Memorial Day. So that's the next meeting.
We're gonna study back on East Crafton parking.
Well, that was what
Yeah.
we were discussing with the engineer.
Yeah, Gateway said we can't do it. And that's why we didn't advertise, the ordinances that are advertised for tonight, the shade tree ordinance, Mr. Mayor, and the rec board, we advertised that right after we talked about it at the council meeting, maybe delayed by a couple weeks. On the traffic side of things, we're waiting for Gateway to complete their study of East Crafton. And then Gateway came back and said that you can't park angled parking on East Crafton, so we scrapped that and then advertised the rest of this. It ran on May 7th. So,
Okay.
Okay. All right, manager, so, you've got the, oh yeah, sorry, solicitor.
I have nothing further to report.
Oh, all right.
Thank you.
That was quick. All right, so to go into normal details on the agenda items before we get started on anything else, you will see on the subject of ordinance amendments, we do have a couple on there, although not the traffic ordinance yet. That will be, like I said, May 29th. The first one is to consider increasing the recreation board membership from 7 to 9. I know that that was a particular board that a lot of people were interested in, and so council had us look into whether we were able to increase the rec board's membership. You can indeed. And so also within that ordinance is a sort of realignment in terms. So I believe right now they end, all of them end in different months. I think this one maybe was in September. Typically you see these appointed positions end at the end of the calendar year, so that way it's just very routine, boom, 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 you appoint everybody at the beginning of the new year. So maybe as we go, the other types of commissions and boards could be put on that schedule, but at least for now, we're amending the rec board ordinance, or considering that rather, and fixing the term alignments is included in that ordinance as well. The second one that is on the agenda for consideration is basically a full retool of the shade tree ordinance. I'm just going to talk kind of briefly about the process of how we got here, since we've got a little bit more of a full house than we did last time when we went through the process. So essentially, shortly, I think it was a couple of meetings after I was here, probably late September, we had a resident come to us with concern about a tree on private property, on his neighbor's private property. He felt that it was hazardous, potentially it could fall on his house and harm him, but we did not necessarily have a good vehicle through which to address public health concerns like that. So we very quickly passed an ordinance amendment in the public health hazard and nuisance ordinance, essentially, to allow us to address, if there's basically a private tree that's gonna fly through somebody's window, how do we get it out of there before it hurts them? So that was sort of the beginning of the discussion of what does our tree ordinance look like, what things can we do to take care of the trees better, how can we prevent this from becoming an issue in the future. So also in the fall around budget time, the Shade Tree Commission came to council with, they had applied for a grant to do something that would be called a street tree inventory, so you get the condition of all of the street trees. Essentially what's the maintenance needs, which ones need to come down, which ones are safe, which ones are not, disease, all of those things, and you get sort of a priority rating of this is how you construct a tree health maintenance budget year to year. So that was incorporated in the 2019 budget. Now that we're having this sort of comprehensive review of our shade tree ordinance, we took a look at a couple different ones, modeled it off of, for instance, Carnegie and Swickley. The Shade Tree Commission had an opportunity to review them. Code enforcement had an opportunity to review it to make sure it was enforceable. We also worked on it, sent it over to the solicitor. That's going to tie in really nicely with this street tree inventory that we have planned either for the summer or the fall, depending on when Penn State can get the intern hours. But essentially we should have, assuming this is passed, a really nice program to make sure that the trees stay healthy, that we are sort of making sure that they're taken care of so there is not a risk of them harming anyone in a windstorm or otherwise, keeping track of really what we've got and how we can best stay a tree city in a way that's healthy and sustainable. This ordinance will allow us to carry that out, have a good way for people to address any concerns, pruning, whether they want a new tree, whether they don't like the tree in front of their house, and we'll have a good idea of what we have with the tree inventory. So that's kind of the overall picture of this shade tree ordinance amendment. I know this has been a big topic, at least since I've been here, probably longer, and I at least would strongly recommend that council consider approving this one particularly. So, to sort of move away from the ordinance into the resolution side, there's just right after that a very boilerplate resolution to submit for a grant for the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program. That is through DCED, Department of Community and Economic Development. There are a couple different things that we have planned for projects over time in the parks, and I'll get to that a little bit later in the report, but the Public Works Director came to me earlier this year and was interested in getting sort of a safety fall play surface, playground tile for our two pocket parks as well as the main park. It's not cheap, so we're going for a grant that was recommended to us by our state representative's office. It is a 15% cash match. We're looking at doing the main park first. And then potentially maybe next year, or sort of building it into an overall park rehab project, doing the safety service for the other pocket parks in the future. We're going to also be applying for probably a piece of playground equipment, maybe around $5,000. I don't know if merry-go-round is the technical term, but I'm sure we all know when you hop on and you hold on to the bars and you spin around until you're sick. One of those we're gonna try and get through the grant as well. So that's due at the end of the month, and we just need a resolution passed by council to approve the fact that we are submitting that. Moving on into the public works section of the agenda, I'm gonna try and be brief here. We've got the 2019 road program bid that was already bid out. I think we've discussed this pretty extensively over the last couple months. This is the lowest responsible bidder. Bids came in a little higher than we had hoped for, but the engineers did believe that that was an accurate reflection of kind of where the market is this year, and they did not recommend rebidding. They said we should just go ahead and take it, essentially. The next item that I've got on here is the Crafton Boulevard, 1654 Crafton Boulevard demolition project. Again, this is something that we've been talking about for several months. We did get a quote that was under the full bidding threshold when we took the telephonic quote, so there's a motion to approve that project for $19,000, again, as recommended by the borough engineer.
May I interrupt you? And the adjacent landowner received a permission to take down the property, or if they acquired the property next door?
Yeah, the property was transferred to him from the redevelopment authority.
So there will be 2 properties on Crafton Boulevard.
That should be coming down.
Almost in succession.
I don't know exactly what
But
he's
this
got
year,
scheduled,
most
but
likely.
this, post haste.
Yeah.
Those projects will move forward. I just wanted to turn over really quickly to our Public Works Director about the next motion on here is to authorize the sale of 2 older paver machines. Maybe he can give a little more information on municipal bid and the process there.
Thank you. Thanks council again for authorizing the purchase of that newer paver. It's a little bigger, a little heavier duty, it's something that will do well with us to do. Some in-house paving on some of our tertiary streets and possibly even some of our secondary streets to add to the paving program. What we're asking for tonight is to actually sell the paver, 2 pavers we have. One was purchased in, I believe before I was here, in the early 2000s. It's a pretty large paver. It's one that would be used on primary roads, and it didn't serve the residents of Crafton, I believe, in the way that it was needed. There's some issues and problems with the paver itself. That's been sitting down there. And the paver that we purchased 2 years ago, it's a little light duty, something that really didn't work out for us. It's more of a parking lot than a street paver. So we want to put both of those on up for bid. And what it is a municipal bid process where this company actually will send in photographs or videos of the machine and the equipment. They place it out for bid and no charge to the borough. What they'll do is we'll set a minimum, hopeful minimum requirement. Look to sell the equipment, they'll sell it and take a percentage off of the seller, whatever the selling price is. So we're looking for $1,000. I think they'll give us our $1,000. They'll charge the buyer 8% over the $1,000 cost. So in essence, it gives us an opportunity, one, to clear an old piece of equipment that was down there for a number of years, get that out of our yard, actually sell it for some type of monetary value. And I believe the paver that we had and used would probably sell for more than we bought it for. It was approximately $6,000. We did a lot of work to it. It just isn't heavy duty enough for us to do what needs to be done on the streets of Crafton. So we're here today to ask council to give us authorization to advertise and sell these 2 pieces of equipment and recoup some of the expenses of the paver we just purchased.
Okay. Last item on the voting agenda, work authorization number 2 for the Crafton Boulevard Grow Grant. This is the portion that is the 60% design cost for this project. Unfortunately, I kick it over to the engineers, but this is not the meeting in which they attend. However, they did send this work auth over so they can get started on the surveying for utilities in this area. Yeah, the grant is due at the end of June, so they didn't necessarily want to hold the work off until the second meeting in May. But again, I think they can give a more full update on that at the next meeting. In the meantime, we can authorize them to continue the work that they've already been doing for prepping this project. Okay, so moving on from the agenda item detail, just a couple things I wanted to flag. One is, we mentioned a few meetings ago the Verizon franchise renewal public hearing. This is not anything fancy, we're kind of just opening the floor to take comment and to send over to the Char West Cause solicitor who is administering the negotiation of this contract. We do need to schedule the public hearing, so if I could get some sort of discussion consensus, something on when would be the best time to do that, so we can go ahead and move forward on that. And I don't know if the solicitor has any additional comments, recommendations.
It's just a check the box item that council needs to allow for public comment on how Verizon has performed, thoughts from the community that we can then provide to the attorney that the COG is using to negotiate the new franchise agreement. You can have it at any meeting, you can have a separate meeting. I think it makes sense just to piggyback it on a council meeting. So, you know, the sooner the better, just to get it out of the way. So if you want to pick a date over the summer, I think that would be sufficient.
Why would we wait until the summer?
I mean, it's too late to advertise it in the Gazette 2.0 for the 29th of May. I think if you tell us now, we could advertise it for the first meeting in June. Yeah. So the summer, I just meant June, July, August, one of the next few months.
So unless anyone has any issue with the June 10th, 9th, 10th meeting, I think it's the 10th, then we'll go ahead and advertise the public comment for that day. Great, all right, so speaking of public hearings, this is something that at the last engineering meeting, the council president had suggested discussing more the South Grandview sewer separation project. Again, that's another one of those GROW grant projects that we've been working on with the engineer. So the question here is sort of, in the sewer separation and in the work done in the road, there will need to be some sort of road reconstruction. Of course, asphalt pavement is much more cost effective. Sometimes there are better ways to deal with stormwater runoff. You know, if the goal is to control the way the water moves in that area and improve the sewer system, it would perhaps, again, the engineers can speak on this more next week, but it might be advantageous to switch to an asphalt material there. However, residents did express a desire in the comp plan that we did in 2017 to sort of honor that historic character of certain streets, and I know there's been some discussion as to whether or not people are willing to go with asphalt over replacing the brick. Now, it's hard to find brick contractors. That's the fact of the matter is that it's not cheap. It's usually about 3 times as expensive as just sort of more modern pavement. However, people do feel kind of strongly about the character of certain streets, so I had suggested that maybe we schedule a public hearing where people can come out, comment on what they think about the project. Again, this grant submission is due at the end of June, so it would need to be sooner than later. But just kind of taking some thoughts, putting this on the radar if this is something you'd like to move forward and schedule.
I think it's really important that council and the public come in and weigh in, because essentially with the project you'd have trenching and just simple brick restoration, and doesn't accommodate the fact that that road needs substantial sub-base improvement. So I think what we need to hear from the public is your permission to go forward with a full depth reconstruction and give you a new street side to side, or come up with a way to fund a brick reconstruction. So, or deal, everybody agrees that, hey, we're just gonna have a patch repair of where, the trench was, and, like we've had in other parts of the community, that would suffice. So I just want the public to come out and give us their opinion on this, because this is the first of many projects in the community as we go through with the sewer separations that are gonna need this type of decision.
And I would certainly suggest that whatever date council picks, it needs to be one in which the engineer, at least someone from our engineering team can attend, because there's going to be questions that really only they have the expertise to answer. Again, the grant is due at the end of June. They typically come to the second meeting. I know we've got a couple things going on for the 29th already, but unless we want to select a day that is not the regular council meeting, that's probably gonna be our best bet. So, any thoughts from anyone?
Would they be able to possibly change their date of their attendance here at our meeting? And if we could move it up until the June 10th, if it has to be in by the end of that month?
Well, yeah, so, I mean, it would either be, if it's the same day as a council meeting, it would either be May 29th or June 10th. Now, I know that Engineer Minsterman does have a different municipalities meeting that he attends. That day, we might be able to get our project manager in, or we can maybe see if the engineer that works with him would be able to attend. I just haven't reached out to them to check on that yet, because I wasn't sure if we wanted to proceed with this. I can, and can get back to you. I wouldn't necessarily recommend
Okay.
taking that.
Okay.
after the planning commission meeting.
No, I'm saying start the meeting at 6, have a public hearing on that. Maybe you get 2 things done at once, the streets and the franchise. You could do both, couldn't you?
I think that, well, I know that the planning commission has other things if they want to.
Yeah, but I'm saying have council meet, have a public hearing to go over the franchise agreement and go over the sewers. And then roll up into the planning commission meeting. I'm just throwing it out there. What do you think? Oh.
We will have the engineers already at the 29th, so that might just be
Okay.
the easiest time to do it.
So-
Planning, the
The
29th.
the 29th is the regular council meeting,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so the 29th,
That would probably be my suggestion,
okay.
unless anyone has any objections.
Yeah, do we want to start earlier on the 29th? Do we advertise
Well-
to start earlier?
We already have a workshop with the fire department.
Oh, yeah, the fire department starting.
So maybe,
Well, we can push that, we can push that on.
okay, I can do the item one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Okay.
this is, yeah, you'll understand.
So we're thinking 6:30?
I think 6.
6.
Is everybody okay with 6 on the 29th? All right, Sue, go ahead. Right.
But then we'd have to have the engineers come out.
Yeah, but we
the
can-
same day.
Fire department. So we could, so what kind of advertisement requirements would be if we wanted to go meet over at the fire department?
That's just an informational meeting, so this doesn't have to have any advertisement.
Okay, then let's do it that way.
Okay.
So it's changing the meeting on Wednesday, the 29th from 7 to 6.
Yes.
Just 6.
Okay, so 6 PM, South Grandview Sewer Separation Public Hearing, yes?
Yeah, and you might as well get your Verizon franchise. What do you think?
Was there gonna be enough time to advertise that, Steve?
Not in the Gazette, but
But we can, with the local extra isn't bad for
you can
just,
do that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just, these meeting advertisers just have to show 24 hours in
Yeah.
advance.
Well, yeah, we can do that in the. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna try and wrap this up, so my report isn't too long here, but, the next item, is the park improvement concepts umbrella item. So we already talked about the playground tiles and the safety surface and, sort of the grant that we're pursuing this year to see if we can get the main park done. We would eventually like to get the pocket parks done, it's just, sort of a matter of cost and applying for grants. We do also have the Crafton pool scheduled to get a new pool liner next year. That was something that we were considering for this year. However, we thought, we can kind of get one more year out of it, whereas we're already buying mulch and, sort of dealing with the condition of the playground area at the main park, and we thought that maybe that was a better thing to focus applying for a grant on this year. So next year, we're looking at, maybe DCNR grant, that's basically the Department of Recreation, Natural Resources at the state level. But the one other thing that we've been discussing with the engineers, and again, they can, potentially bring some drawings at the next meeting or something, is a shelter concept in the lower ball field. I know this is an issue that comes up a lot with, concerns about water, or, how best to use that space. A few years ago, I guess, the Rotary chapter here had come to Borough, or spoken to somebody around here, and said that they would like to basically help us build a bigger shelter, sort of like the Rotary shelter that's in Clever Park in Robinson, which coincidentally, their Rotary chapter also helped them build out there to host one of their larger events. So, depending on whether or not that's still on the table, we've started conversations with them, but with that area, it's hard to drain a ball field reliably when it's sort of at the bottom of a bowl. However, if the shelter was potentially sited there, we would be able to explore options with new techniques in permeable paving. So what that means is if you have a parking lot that's sort of sloped, instead of all of the water pooling at the low point and just sitting there, you can actually have it come through the pavement into, either there's a tank or it connects directly to a pipe. Our engineers have done things like this before, most notably probably around here at the Penn State Extension Campus building, which is over by where the Penguins play. I guess that's the PPG Paints Arena now, although it's changed names a couple times. So it's a really nice green infrastructure technique, and we could potentially, again, turn around and invest a little more into the upper ball field and get something that is both beneficial to use as well as solves the water problem down there. So again, this is just very much in the conceptual stage, but we just tossed it out to the engineers as maybe a way that we could collaborate with a local group to add an amenity to our parks, basically. So yeah, I can ask you to bring a little bit more information. This wouldn't be this year certainly, there would be a lot of time to consider. Not before next year, maybe the year after, just sort of depending on what funding is available and how the Rotary might be able to cooperate. But just wanted to put it out there that we're thinking of ways to deal with the water problem down there. Last item on my list is very easy. Spring summer newsletter hit the mailboxes last week. If you have any questions, give us a call, shoot us an email. It's mostly a recreation and community activities feature for the summer. Again, thank you to everyone who contributed and worked hard on making sure that it looked nice. Still a new redesign for this year, but I'm really happy with how it's turning out. So if anyone has any questions, comments, ideas, whatever, now's the time. Otherwise, that's my report.
Anybody have any questions? Just a quick question on the kitchen update, the plan to Allegheny County Health Department, are we moving forward with
That has been passed on to the code enforcement officer, so
Okay.
she's working on the floor plan for that submission.
Okay. All right, great. All right, if everybody's okay, I'm gonna move forward with committee reports. Administration, Claudia, do you have anything this evening?
Yeah, just to mention that the administrative staff has gotten online real time with the turnkey packs, which has allowed data going real time to Jordan, so Jordan is able to process more information more quickly, and that has been a big accomplishment for them. And I'll keep it brief since I'm remote.
All righty. Thank you, Claudia. Moving forward, Parks and Rec.
I was just looking at some programs to get some more park equipment purchased or something for the two smaller parks.
Okay. I think you're looking at some of those DCNR grants. Okay. Yeah. And some of those funds come from Act 167, and Allegheny County is one of the recipients. That's actually the grant. Our former president council's here. She helped get the pool rehab and splash pad up. So some of those funds came from that. So we'll see what we can move forward. I know Public Works Director talked to Mr. Kraus and I about safety service, and that's sort of, there's a lot of overlap here. So you also mentioned that. Anything else?
No, it's just been 20 years since something's been done with the two parks. overtime to do something.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add, I believe the volunteers at the house tour had requested that this year, since I think the funds they used to raise that maybe for the pool or some sort of other recreational function, they did want to put those towards getting a piece of equipment for each of the parks. So that was planned for this year, to at least get some sort of, one piece for each of them, basically.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Amendola, Public Safety?
Yeah, I don't have anything to report, Crafton. However, I would like to ask for just a moment of silence. There was another school shooting in North Carolina where 2 students were killed and 4 were injured. A student, Riley Howe, stepped in front of the shooter and actually saved lives, but got killed in the process. This was the 41st shooting in U.S. schools this year. We're into the 5th month, but I'd just like to have a moment of silence so we remember those students and what's going on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amendola. All right, moving forward, Public Works Committee. I feel as if we've discussed a lot of the items. I'm just gonna discuss a little further the one item with regards to the Crafton Boulevard project. I was in touch with the school board president, Mr. Stryver. There's an opportunity for the school district and the municipality to work together on putting in a green parking lot and to facilitate this complete separation of the Crafton Boulevard project, which ties into the Clearview Bar area. So it's very exciting. The school district actually had plans on the book to do something like that. However, due to resource constraints at the school district, they were going to be unable to do that in the near term. So with working with our engineers, Alcosan, and hopefully now in a joint partnership, that we'll see a nice clean new parking lot there to provide additional parking. And I believe there's going to be some park benches and other amenities in the design. And in return to the Borough of Crafton, we'll be able to put our tankage. They'll actually be a net zero to the watershed during peak flow. So it's a win-win for the school district, for the municipality, for Alcosan. So we're hoping that we can get across the finish line here to, hopefully minimize some of the sewer backup issues that we see during these heavy storms.
I
So-
think I'd like to bring up something on
Yes.
that. I'm anxious to see what Gateway does as far as the surveying of that, because the property that was on
Yes.
had the store and then had the house.
Mhm.
And there were large basement areas there.
Okay.
I'm just wondering where the tank and where they're going to be putting all the tanks. Is it back by the tennis courts, or the old tennis courts?
So from what I understand, the setback probably is gonna be 10, 15 feet off the roadway, and then there's gonna, I don't know if that's where the basements were, so there would have to be excavations put in, and there'll be some very large pipes, large diameter pipes put in, and it looks like a maze, and then once that fills up, and it goes to an overflow, which will then go down into the creek. So the idea is that in the roadway itself, there also will be large diameter pipe that will create the storage that's needed to cut down on the peak. So what's necessary, this is what the engineers are going to come talk to us about, is they basically had a challenge to, their charge was to basically not add one more gallon during a storm event to that, to minimize any kind of downstream effect. So.
Be anxious to see how this
Yeah.
is going to work.
So they had the school district had plans, go ahead. No. Sorry, the school district had plans at one point to put in
Parking
a
lot.
parking
That's all
lot.
that had been discussed.
Yes, and
Nothing had been discussed about these catch basins.
yeah, they had preliminary plans for some types of, for underground tankage, I believe, that's why I saw, and a overflow, and they actually had to work with the conservancy that has an adjoining property owner. So what we did is we're basically upgrading the plan that they had and connecting it to the rest of the plan, because our challenge was how were we gonna get this water to the creek? So hopefully this is a win-win for Alcoasand, Crafton, and for the district. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
That property is all the city of Pittsburgh. None of that's in Crafton.
Correct.
Okay, so our involvement financially would be zero?
No, it's our water. So our responsibility is for either, regardless of, maybe I'll let the solicitor explain in a better term. His question is, well, why are we putting any money in the ground there if it's in the city of Pittsburgh? And the reality is, it's our water, it's our infrastructure, and we have to, it's an intermunicipal issue.
I think this would be a good discussion for next meeting when the engineers are here, can maybe explain some of the different aspects of where things are being proposed to be put.
Is this the motion number 4 that pertains to that?
Well, to continue doing the engineering work, that is number 4 under the public works section.
For this property in the city of Pittsburgh?
Well, I mean, it's not just that. This is a sewer separation project that would run kind of the length of Crafton Boulevard up to Clearview Avenue. It's just that the end of the pipe currently designed would be a property that borders and is partially on the city of Pittsburgh. It's you know how Crafton Boulevard is halfway
Yes.
Crafton, yeah. So the creek is on that side, is on the Pittsburgh side. So
Creek that floods
yeah.
down in Chartiers every time we have a bad
The
rain.
engineers are going to be more qualified than I am to explain
Yeah, well,
the
we'll
water
talk to them, I
dynamics
guess,
there.
next week or 2
Yes.
weeks, right?
Next meeting.
We've
yes.
had this discussion about that creek down there, and it's not gonna handle the load. It's just not gonna happen. And when we get flooding down there every time there's a bad rain, Moraine Road, and the end of Chartiers there, and, okay.
So, at the next meeting, the engineer's gonna come, they're gonna show you all the models. There was a lot of modeling, that's what we've been paying for. We can't take the water across the bridge because the diameter of the pipe won't hang from that. That was a question that I posed, to connect it into the, keep on going down Crafton Boulevard and tie.
Larger than a person.
Right, to tie into the Grandview project. However, we can't get it across the busway. That's the barrier.
Well, so why don't we put this motion vote off until after we hear from the engineer?
I mean, well, the engineer at least asked me to put this motion on here. I think it would be difficult for them to do all of the design work necessary between May 29th and the end of the month of June, which would be when they have to submit the grant. I did talk to them about this on Friday and said, look, I mean, I would feel better having you there to answer some questions, but I mean, should we just get the work off started now for the surveying? And he said, yeah, this is a pretty big project, they would feel more comfortable.
Yeah, it is a lot of money too.
So, right, which is
It's a lot of
why it's
money.
on there as a motion. I can't sign anything that's that big on my own, so.
It's the cart before the horse.
Actually, so anyway, going back to it, in order to get the grant approved and get the funding, we have to get into the design phase of 60%.
That is true, yeah.
So-
$68,000, not to exceed
Not to exceed.
$68,000.
Right.
Well, I can't sit here and consciously vote for that if
All right, thank you.
we don't have enough information on it, really, and it's in the city of Pittsburgh.
All right. Mr. Krause, you have anything to add?
No, yeah, RJ touched on most of the salient points, you followed up with the rest. So no, I have nothing to say.
Moving forward to the business agenda. Under administration, a motion to approve ordinance number 1656, amending chapter 50 of the Crafton Borough Code of Ordinances Recreation Board to increase the Recreation Board to 9 members and to amend the date of the expiration term.
So moved.
Second that.
Any discussion?
Yes, just a comment. The two, the expiration terms and the adding of 2 more people, I would have liked to seen that separated. I do agree with amending the date of expiration, but I don't agree with adding 2 other members to the Recreation Board. And my reasons are that we've got a good Recreation Board. There are several people that work hard at it. There are some people that are doing a good job leading the Recreation Board, and there are some troublemakers on the Recreation Board, and you're aware of that. If you just fix the situation that's going on with the Recreation Board, I don't think we need 2 more members. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Yeah, do roll call.
Okay,
All opposed?
roll call vote.
Just take a roll call.
Mr. Amendola,
No.
Mr. Kraus,
Yes.
Ms. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Glasser,
Yes.
Ms. Dammits,
Yes.
Mr. Rosario,
Yes.
Mr. Lavasser.
Yes.
6-1, motion carries.
Alright, moving forward, a motion to approve ordinance number 1657, amending chapter 29 of the Crafton Borough Code of Ordinances, Park and Shade Tree Commission to establish the duties and responsibilities of the Shade Tree Commission and to provide for the regulation, protection, and maintenance of certain plants, shrubs, and trees in the Borough of Crafton.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, can we put something in there that we stop planting trees between the sidewalk and the street, the curb line? I mean, it's pushing all the sidewalks, homeowners are have to fix their sidewalks. And when the tree falls down, it's the homeowner's problem though, isn't it?
So this is,
Well, that's the definition of a shade tree, is the tree that's between the street and the sidewalk. So I think that if we stopped planting shade trees entirely, we would not have a shade tree program. So that's a decision that we could make, certainly. Under this ordinance, the tree is not the homeowner's responsibility if it's a street tree, it is the responsibility of the borough to maintain it.
So the one on Harris Street, we paid to have that one cut down?
so the one that fell down last week and the one that fell down South Emily and any other one that have fallen, there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of gray area. This makes it black and white as to what is the municipality's responsibility and what is the responsibility of the property owner. So in this case, it's going to be incumbent upon the municipality to take care of the shade trees in these circumstances, and barring any acts of God, if we're negligent in keeping up with their maintenance with regards to if they're obviously rotted or have any other kinds of blight, it's going to be very clear to the municipality and to the Shade Tree Commission that they're to bring that to our attention and we're to budget for that care accordingly.
Right, which, I mean, that's the reason for the Penn State intern study that we've discussed, is essentially so we know what's out there so that we can actually take care of it properly.
Now, when they plant a tree, can the homeowner say they don't want it there?
So the typical process for a shade tree commission is when they want to plant a tree in the tree line, adjacent to property, they should advertise just the same as we do for a public meeting, which would be for the consideration of planting. So at least the homeowners, or anyone really has the opportunity to come and make public comment as to whether or not they are okay with the tree being planted there.
The ordinance also requires the borough to notify by mail an abutting property owner if the tree is to be cut down or replaced, et cetera. So folks will know what is happening in front of their properties if the Shade Tree Commissioner of the borough intends to take some sort of action.
So it's not the homeowner has to pay to have the tree cut down.
If we're talking about a public tree, yes. Now, that, we do also have regulations related to trees on private property that may be overhanging the street or encroaching in the sidewalk, and the borough can notify those property owners, just like under a property maintenance code scenario, that they should, or they are required to cut branches, have the tree pruned, etc. I think the clearance on the sidewalks was 8 feet, and over the street it's 14 or 15 feet. So it's designed to allow the homeowners time to take care of those situations. If there's an emergency situation, which we've discussed before, the borough can make quick notification and take action, and then work with the homeowner on payment.
Yeah, and regarding the removal of trees and financial responsibility, essentially if the borough initiates removing a street tree, whether it's a project or we just don't want the tree there, or it's diseased, whatever it needs to come out, that is on the borough because we are initiating that action. The abutting property owner, the resident, can also make an application to the Shade Tree Commission where they say, we really don't like the shade tree in front of our house, and here are the reasons that we really wish it wasn't here. This is already a process that we go through with the Shade Tree Commission, but this ordinance kind of is just tightening up the way that we do it, making a better process. So if somebody petitions the Shade Tree Commission to take down a tree that we did not otherwise have plans to take down, then if approved, they would understand they would be responsible for paying for the removal of the tree. But if it's something that the borough initiates, that's on us.
It makes it crystal clear as to what the process is, and who's responsible for what, whereas before there really weren't many written regulations in our ordinances about that. And so this, I think, will help the borough and the residents understand what their rights, obligations, etc. are moving forward.
Any other questions? All right, moving forward, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Coletta?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes, thank you. All right. Motion to approve resolution 2019-05, requesting a grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development through the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Somebody add a little color to this, give a little more detail.
Well, that was what we discussed with the playground safety surface tile. Do you want any further?
All right, that's fine.
Cool.
So everybody understanding there? Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All that opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving forward to Public Works, motion to award the bid for the 2019 road program to Mealy and Sons, Incorporated, an amount of $315,234.50 as recommended by the borough engineer.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Sorry.
Bailey and Bailey, were they the guys that had us last year?
No.
No.
2 years ago. That's not last year?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, yeah, that was in the pen. Yep.
Still in the back.
They didn't bid.
They did not.
All
It's
right.
still not fixed yet. Still, the streets aren't, they haven't come back to do anything to it.
Yeah, and then,
Well,
alrighty. All right, I'm gonna move forward with the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Motion to award the 1654 Crafton Boulevard demolition project to Delaware Professional Services Incorporated, amount of $19,000 as recommended by the borough engineer.
so moved.
Second.
Any questions?
Have they done any other work around our area?
That wasn't information that they provided me with.
Yeah, from what I understand, they've done quite a bit of work with the city of Pittsburgh. That's the only thing I know. Yes. Yes. And Mr. Perky, who's one of our residents, has taken down the one next to it. We were going to see maybe if we could coordinate something, but under the guidance of the solicitor and the manager, we've decided to,
Public bidding requirements, you have to watch, yeah.
yeah. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I,
All right, all that opposed? Motion passes. Motion to authorize the sale of the Crafton Public Works Department 1998 Puckett Puckett asphalt paver and Blawnox paver on municipal bid.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Thanks for getting this together. And one other question for you. The other unit that's down there by Public Works, is that something that we can get, the one that we talked about scrapping or putting out?
That's the block.
That's that,
That's the
okay.
block, yeah.
All right, cool, just wanna make sure. All right. Hearing no other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
All that opposed? Motion passes. Motion to approve work authorization number 2, the Crafton Boulevard Borough Grant Project Existing Condition Survey and 60% Alcosan Grow Grant submission to an amount not to exceed $68,000, $23,000 for existing condition survey, and $45,000 for Alcosan submission.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
I don't know if I agree with that to go forward right now without us seeing. I mean, do we have to pay them before we get to see what the plans are for this? I'm just concerned about
I think
that.
they have to do the work, that's the thing, so.
I think we should table the
Knowing
motion.
the property.
We should table the motion until we get more information. I mean, you guys are having these meetings with Gateway Engineering, and we don't know what's happening, and then you want us to vote on $68,000 without hearing from the engineer.
So the engineer's been giving us updates the entire
Okay, well,
time.
this is the first time I've heard anything about doing work in the city of Pittsburgh across from the school. This is the first time.
It's something that's
Can I
needed.
ask you?
Yes, Ms. Perry.
We're talking about this property as being in the city of Pittsburgh, but is it not the property of the Carlington School District now?
Yes, it
Which
is.
then, in fact, makes it part of our school district in our area, much like the high school is not in any of our municipalities.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and the whole purpose of this, you know, and I heard Fred mention earlier, the problem with the flooding of the creek, is this not to hold back water to, in fact, reduce the amount of flooding that we have at peak rain times? Is that not the purpose of this?
That's
And
correct.
are we not under a deadline to apply for this grant?
That's correct, yeah. I think that was part of the engineer's interest in getting the work authorization on sooner than later, was that they might run out of runway to do all the work. I mean, I suppose an option would be to maybe approve a work authorization at half of this amount and then approve the other half at the next meeting. Now, I haven't spoken to the engineers about that, so I don't know if that will give them enough budget runway between now and the next meeting. But if it's really a question of whether or not we're gonna approve any work at all and that's more palatable, maybe that's an option. I think they've been pretty responsible in the way they've expended this project budget, so.
Mr. President, there's a motion on the floor to move the vote on the motion, please.
Did you call the vote?
I'm calling the vote, yes.
Have a discussion.
Yeah, I think that I asked it to be tabled, or made a motion for it to be tabled. 2 weeks, I mean, 2 weeks.
Mr. Amendola just made a motion a second, so is there a second? A motion to table, sorry, Fred.
A motion to table,
Yeah,
yes.
so is
2 weeks.
there a second to Mr. Amendola's motion to table?
Coletta just seconded.
No, Coletta did, okay. All right, so there's no debate, you just have to take a roll call. You can't debate a motion to table.
Okay, Mr. Amendola,
So it's yes to table,
this is the vote to table.
yes.
To table.
Mr. Kraus,
No.
Ms. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Glasser,
Yes.
Ms. Damitz,
No.
Mr. Rosario,
No.
Mr. Lavasser?
No.
Okay, motion to table does not pass. 4-3.
So now you're back to the original motion.
Are we, before we can vote though, are we actually, for this motion though, we're not authorizing any payment, we're just authorizing to do some kind of work, is that correct?
Well, they'll bill us. I mean, This
$16,000.
is assuming,
I understand they're gonna bill us though, but is this an authorization to pay them right now?
No.
there's no work billed yet. I mean, it will, the purpose of this motion is to authorize that we sign the bills when they come in up to this amount.
Okay.
And this is about a larger project to reduce our water into Alcoasand. And we
Yes.
have the responsibility to do that, if I understand things correctly.
That's correct. Right.
And it sounds like from what you said earlier, Philip, that the school board, and there's a potential to work with the school board in order to have a place to actually do work that gets us to the goals that we have for reducing the water flow at peak times. Am I understanding this correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're gonna end up paying the engineers to do some work at some point. And basically what we've got, if I understand this correctly, we have the school board offering the property that they own to work with the borough to help us get to the goals that we have that are mandated. And we're just asking to get the engineers to do the work to the percentage that we have done in order to apply for the grant.
Yes.
And our engineers, who we've been trusting for a very long time, have recommended this as a good way to go and a good use of our money.
Yes. They're very excited about it because they got to a net zero. So one of the things that they were doing was, technically, Crafton Borough is ahead of the peak flow, so technically we could get our water out to the stream and get it out into Chartiers Creek before everybody else gets their water there. But to be ultra conservative, we went to a net zero, meaning that we're not going to be adding any additional flow to any of the to a storm event. So it's a really nice model, and that's what they're going to come here to show off to us. They're very proud of where they were able to get this. And what really was the catalyst here was when I called up the district and I said, this is something that's very interesting to us. We know you had plans for a parking lot there with some type of rain garden. Is there any type of synergy here to help both governing bodies to get something, a new lot for the Crafton Elementary, and to get us what we need, which is separation. Because right now, if we don't do anything, we're just going to continue putting our sewage into the Chartiers Creek.
I guess the
And
best,
that's a big thing that we're trying to eliminate.
the best way to explain sort of the technique they're using in design is, let's say you have a bathtub that is full of water. It cannot take any water and it's plugged, and you want to dump a bucket into it. The bathtub will overflow if it's full. The idea is that we're hanging on to that bucket of water until you can pull the plug and have the bathtub drain. If that makes sense. I know that's kind of a complicated way to look at it, but maybe that's a little more layman's than peak flow and sewer separation and holding things back and all of the things that we hear in the engineering meetings, but, maybe aren't super accessible, so.
President Lavasser, I'd like to make a comment on the motion. It was my understanding that this motion is simply, this isn't in regards to any kind of construction work at the site, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is just for the managers and their offices to do due diligence on this particular aspect of the application, but as well as the larger Crafton Boulevard separation, which would be on our side of the border, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So my understanding from the engineering meeting was that most of this money was going towards Crafton soil and separating things on the Crafton side of the line, and then making like a left turn to cross the 12 feet of street to get to the parking lot, to go under the parking lot and then dump it on the other side of the river, or to the creek, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
It's needed very badly, the parking up there, some of these kids are darting out in front of cars, and it definitely needs to be addressed.
Abby, do you have any other questions? All right. Yeah, we're gonna roll call.
Okay, this is for this vote is for the approval of this work authorization, so we're gonna do a roll call for that.
For survey.
Yeah, for survey, and then the back half is for, once the survey is done, putting together the final application. So this work auth should take us through the grant submission in March. All right.
In your
Mr.
meetings,
President, could we call the vote, please?
I have another question.
Okay.
In your engineering meetings, have they shown you any alternative?
Yes, the alternatives,
We're not in any violation of any consent decree.
yes, we are.
I would like to see that, but I don't think that we are.
You can go on the internet and go look at the EPA and the DEP's consent decree that came down to Alcoasand. We are a part of that, and therefore it is our responsibility to work with Alcoasand to separate our stormwater out of the sewers so we don't send a commingled sewage and stormwater mixture to Chartiers Creek. So Alcoasand's very, very incentivized by US EPA and DEP to get the low-hanging fruit, which is the stormwater out of the system, because the broader issue is just the number of gallons of sewage, and so what we're doing is we're trying to minimize that volume. So yes, we are out of compliance with the Clean Water
We're
Act.
out of compliance.
We are out of compliance with the Clean Water Act.
I'm gonna
And the
research
cl-
that.
Please do. And the Clean Streams Law. So those are two things that Alcoasand are very much out of compliance. We have two POCs, points of compliance, on Chartiers Creek that are very much out of compliance. If you'd like to take yourself and your grandchildren and your children down there to the the former creek house and down to the others along the creek, you will.
So my question was there an alternative plan that they
So-
showed?
They
so
put
it-
a lot of work into putting at least this
Correct.
one together.
There's
It's
no
the best
alternative
thing they
plan?
could come up with.
to get the water out of the system, out. So we did all the work on Clearview, right, over the past decade. Right now, we have it all lined back together with sewage. Our goal is to get that stormwater out of the sewage system, so all the interior areas where we have still a commingled system will have more capacity to deal with the rain events that we get and the sewage. You know, our biggest issue is the fact that we're getting more and more rain, right, on average. So we're trying to create more capacity in the system by taking the upstream flows out to allow for more capacity downstream, so we don't have things like sewage backups, or we don't have overflows down at our points of compliance. That's the overall goal, is just to make more room in the system for sewage, so sewage does not go into the waterways.
And last year, we talked about this, and you said exactly the same thing, that we needed to finish that Clearview project to solve the problems on Clearview. So now, that's not solving our problems.
So it's all tied.
We're gonna work at the other end
So
and
it's all tied
do
together.
work
So-
in the city of Pittsburgh.
So,
You can get on with the vote. I've heard enough.
Just for clarification, the reason that the borough is a party to the consent decrees is because the borough and Alcoasand are in violation of state and federal law with respect to the sewage and stormwater overflows. That's why it exists. So there's a violation, and that's why for the last 15 years we've been working towards this, in your community, a separation of the sewage and stormwater, and in other communities they're looking to get infiltration where they're not a combined system, but in some locations, water is entering the sewage Alcosan system, and they're trying to take those out. So you guys in Crafton have a harder row to hoe because you have a combined system. Whereas other communities have other projects that they're doing which aren't as intense and is involved with what's happening here. So there is a violation, that's why we're doing what we've been doing for the last 15 years.
Yeah, and essentially, just so the public understands, we're retrofitting a community that's over 100 years old. In today's development, you'd have retention ponds, you'd have tankage, you'd have infiltration berms. We don't have that area to do that here. So we have to either figure out how to get it to the creek quickly, or we have to put it underground and hold it back. So we have very limited options, because the reality is we're not gonna start buying out our neighbors and putting huge retention ponds where they live.
How many extensions have Crafton had in 15 years? We ran out of every extension that we could get.
Well, the
The whole-
entire
that's the
county
whole
has an
county.
unfunded mandate. I mean, that's a whole big thing, but it's, the guidance for how much we should be expected to remove from our sewer systems should be coming out before the end of the year.
Okay.
The engineers have a pretty good guess to it.
You ready, call, roll call?
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, roll call vote. Mr. Amendola,
No.
Mr. Kraus,
Yes.
Ms. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Glosser,
Yes.
Ms. Damitz,
Yes.
Mr. Rosario,
Yes.
Mr. Lavasser.
Yes.
6-1, motion carries.
All right. Moving forward to discussion items.
Nothing explicit necessarily, but I did just want to flag to the council in general, because one of the Shade Tree Commission members came in and mentioned it today. We do have several letters of interest for a couple different boards and commissions that we advertised for several months ago. Again, they're all available on the council drive for review. So if anyone has any thoughts or would like to take action on those, maybe the next couple meetings, we've got 2 seats open on the Building Appeals Board and 1 application. We have 1 seat open on the Shade Tree Commission and 1 application. And I believe at least 1 seat open on the Civil Service Commission and 1 application. So please do take the time to review those so that maybe we can discuss them at a later meeting.
Could you have a list of the positions open and the applications and just send hard copy to council? Could you put together a
Do
little
you
packet?
want me to mail those out?
Or have them for the council to pick up, just so
Okay.
everybody's on the same page?
Sure. Do you want me to take them off the council drive or leave them on?
Leave them on, but just make sure that people have a hard copy so we're on the same page, literally.
We can do that.
All right, thank you. Gonna move forward with community announcements. The Crafton Pool, you wanna just go over that, the Crafton Pool? Would you go over
What
the
particularly?
community announcements, just go over both of them.
Sure. 1 second. Want to make a note
Pardon
here for
everybody.
letters of interest? Okay, so, 2 announcements we have on here are just that season passes for the pool are on sale at the Borough office between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. You can come see Carissa and Catherine's smiling faces as they print you out your season pool pass IDs. Also, they just wanted to make note that swim lesson information is available on the website, which is www.craftonborough.com. You can also find a lot of information about the pool activities, hours, different things like that in the newsletter that did go out. If you didn't get a copy, again, it's scanned onto the Borough website, or we're happy to maybe print you up a little bootleg one in the office, because we have them mass printed and mailed by the printing company already. So that's really it for the pool announcements.
Memorial Day Parade.
Oh, okay, yep. Memorial Day Parade begins at 10 a.m. in Ingram and concludes at the Crafton Borough Building with a memorial service. Of course, that is Monday, May 27th.
Is anybody from council gonna go? I heard the mayor loud and clear.
Yeah, I expect to be there, as I am in previous years.
Alright. And again, I apologize, Mayor, I was on vacation with away. Like, we had a little baby moon, I'm sorry.
I like that theory.
All right, additional citizen comments? Name, address.
Okay, my name's Mike Sear, my address is 250 Lincoln Street. So I came tonight because I heard rumors about this stormwater management project. And I was very disappointed to see that council has voted to spend $68,000 to do engineering that at best is incomplete. Number one, I don't see any conceptual drawings on display at the borough offices. I don't see any plans for alternatives. And 20 years ago in this community, a program was started and you acquired acreage along Chartiers Creek strictly for that program to intercept the stormwater in Crafton. It was funded to the tune of $475,000 and would only cost Crafton Borough $18,000. You guys took a man's property for this very issue, stormwater management, and now you're spending $68,000 to do conceptual drawings and engineering to only manage a third of the borough's water problem. And to say that going across the busway is the only way to get the water down there is patently ridiculous. There have been plans on drawing boards for years, for decades, in this borough that are just being ignored. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Gateway Engineer's been the engineer forever. Why aren't they telling you what happened in 1999? Why did we buy $3 million worth of property? And now it sits there, $3 million worth of landlocked property. You can't even get there. This is ridiculous. You should be ashamed of yourselves for not looking into this stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Sear. Anybody else?
Dan Cindric, 45 Creighton Avenue. I just wanted to add one thing to what the mayor had said about the memorial. There's also what's called a memory medallion that's on that memorial. And if you take your smartphone, you can read the QR code on it, and it'll tell you the story of what happened to Mr. Huffman, Patrolman Huffman. So you should go out and try it, it's really interesting. I just had one other comment. I heard that we're going to pave half of Hawthorne and the gas company's going to pave the other half. Could you tell the public why the utility company is not going to be paving curb to curb? Why do we have to pay half of what they dug up?
Yeah, the extent of their excavation went to the center line. So they're responsible for full line, they're responsible for full line restoration of what they dug up.
So they're not responsible curb to curb?
They're not responsible curb to curb. If they went to the center of the street,
So
trench the center of the
public
street.
should know that. So.
Yeah. If they went center of the street, then they would be responsible for full curb to curb restoration. But since they didn't cross the center line except for one location, they're responsible for half of it.
There's a time frame too. Let's say we within the past, was it 2 years or 36 months, if you have like a curb box that had to get dug up and.
It's a 2-year one, yeah.
2-year
Somebody
one.
excavates a newly paved street, and then they're responsible to go curb to curb.
Hey, just one other thing. Mr. Amendola had mentioned, I think just in passing, about flooding. I don't think he meant flooding in Chartiers Creek. I think he meant flooding of Bell's Run.
Correct.
Which is down at Idlewood.
That's correct.
Because we have flooding, regular flooding there when we have bad storms.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's where they want to put the water.
And then,
And the water is going to be flowing into Chartiers, into Bell's Run before it gets to Idlewood, correct?
Yes.
correct.
So it's just going to add to.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that with all the modeling, that's what we're paying for, all the engineering modeling. It's not just conceptual drawings of where pipes goes, we're actually doing water modeling as to where the flow goes and what's going on with actual Bell's Run. And then in addition, I went out with the engineer, what was it, 3 or 4 months ago in the winter and looked at the busway, because the culvert down there is obviously very undersized. And so, working with the public works director and the manager to facilitate some type of dialogue with the Port Authority, see if we can improve the infrastructure there, because our issue is that Crafton's not contributing to the stormwater issues. Our upstream communities from us, such as Green Tree, such as the city of Pittsburgh, have been granted permissions to separate their systems, and most recently Poplar, into that system. And we have Foster Plaza and all those other areas that are contributing stormwater and flooding out that issue. And that's where we're not going to add to that flow.
I understand it, I just don't think you addressed Mr. Amendola's concern of the flooding at Idlewood and how this would affect the flooding at Idlewood.
Right.
He
So,
mentioned it in passing, and then
yes.
I didn't hear anything else.
Yeah, so when I say, Mr. Amendola, Mr. Cindric, when I say net zero, the idea is that there will be no additional water gained at Idlewood during a storm event. Therefore, we're not responsible to contributing to a problem that's already pretty significant. So that's the goal, that we don't do that. And that's another reason why phase 5, phase 4, phase 3, phase 2, and 1 of the Clearview project, that we're holding back that water, and hopefully, with this Crafton Boulevard project, that last phase 5, the last $400,000 or $500,000 there, we're actually gonna get that money back, and we're hoping actually we get the entire, almost in its entirety, what we put into the Clearview project, because it would be a separation, 85%.
That would be the maximum.
Maximum.
Would be 85%.
But everything else what we do that ties into that separation project, that we would be getting upwards of 85% out of it. So that's the goal, is to separate and get the maximum dollars from Alcoasand.
I guess I still don't see how that's not gonna add to water flooding at Idlewood.
Because we're holding it back before,
Green Tree's water is beating us
Oh,
there.
okay,
Right.
because of,
The other water is beating us there.
because of.
we've added the
The
tankage
tankage.
Correct.
At the parking lot.
at the parking lot and all the way up the system,
Okay,
all the way up the system.
all right, thanks.
And so, going back to the Nancy Volker,
No.
sorry, I'm sorry, Dorothy Kramer. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Kramer. I live at 26 South Grandview Avenue, and I'm also the secretary at St. Philip's Church on West Crafton. And we're kind of concerned about no parking on West Crafton, and we're talking about the cemetery hill that's always been there. People have parked there for as long as the church has been. We have not seen any evidence that it brings any more accidents. We did not see any accidents or plans showing anything that would cause that coming up Broadhead. We understand on Cornell, near the service station there, the cars are parking there, there is no yellow line, and I agree with that. That is hard to see when you're coming up on Broadhead, but I can't see across the street. We only park there on Sundays now. We made sure during the week when it was parked there that they all stopped. So we just asked to please consider a variance that they allow this for Sunday services for us. And Mayor Bloom, I apologize for your wife. She should not have been, I kind of know who did it, and I apologize. But, because that was not right at all, and I apologize to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anthony Salva.
Anthony Saba, 568 Broadhead. So while we're talking about the parking in front of St. Philip's, originally when I brought this issue to council, the one thing I had asked was council work with St. Philip's to come to a reasonable solution. I understand there's not enough parking around, but one of the things that we see is whenever we're on the street, people do not utilize the parking. They're actually parking on the street before they utilize the church's parking lots. I understand Sunday services, special services, there are quite a few folks that come in and there's not enough parking. But my biggest concern is safety. When people are parking along the side of the church going down Church Hill, there's been numerous times where I'm coming up from Route 60 on that turn, because the way the light is set up, it's a right turn on green, and it's just, and going straight from left is green. That when you're coming up, there's many times where I've come up on front of the hill, there's a car in my lane in front of me. It's even happened where we pull off a Broadhead, and all of a sudden there's cars in front of us trying to get around. So it makes it really dangerous to maneuver. So maybe a part of this ordinance would be to throw in things that would also benefit the church too. That they're not, it's not a hindrance to their services as well, but also making it safe for everyone in the community. Because from Broadhead alone, there is a lot of folks who walk. And so my second point I actually want to bring up is, so I've been walking around Borough quite a bit. It is actually kind of unsafe to walk around between a lot of the sidewalks. Need maintained, whether that's the responsibility of the borough, whether that's the responsibility of the homeowners. There needs to be some kind of enforcement, so I want to see what council's going to do about that. But not just that, there's been a lot of overgrowth, where there's even times where I'm walking down Broadhead or even driving down, I cannot see folks walking because there is brush and different plants that are overgrown over the street, and even different parts of the borough. So just an overall comprehensive look. Even in front of the church, the crosswalks are worn. And if you go down by Dairy Delight, their crosswalks are worn too. In fact, somebody posted the other day that their daughter almost got hit right by the ice cream shop. So I just want to see what council has in mind to, we are a outdoor community. We should be able to walk around the community without having to worry about, oh, we have to dodge a part of the sidewalk and we're getting close to the road.
So I can speak a little bit on some of the things that we've been working on at the office, at least, because obviously, this is not the first time that somebody's brought this to our attention, even since I've been here, which has been pretty brief, but, so there were a couple different ways that we were considering trying to get some sort of pedestrian facility inventory, which is just a fancy way for saying, have somebody look at the sidewalks and figure out which ones are in, fair, poor, good, whatever condition. Unfortunately, the intern program that I had hoped we might get like a full-time summer intern for, it's called Local Government Academy, awesome program. I came up through it. They cut the number of of municipalities they approved in half, from 26 to 13 this year. I think it was just a funding issue, but we don't have to have an intern in the summer basically to do that mapping. We've continued to look at ways to see where we could at least get an idea of, okay, these are the main walking routes officially on paper, and these are the ones that we can focus on. Code enforcement wise, I know our code enforcement officer is a particularly avid walker. I think that's kind of part of why the job was appealing to her, and she definitely has been active in sending notices for sidewalks that are particularly in disrepair. It's just that, it's a process. We have a lot more active code enforcement than we have had in the past. Council does get, in part of the monthly reports, just an activity report for what we're working on with code enforcement. Sort of the general thing that we say around the office is, look, some things may be new code enforcement wise. As long as people are working with us, we want to work with them. So, we're not here to stress people out and slap them with a bill, but just to make things safer for everybody. So that's kind of the overall approach we're taking right now.
And just one last point, I just want to thank Rob and his team. So a lot of folks in the borough don't know that if you're cleaning up your yard, you have a lot of sticks that you can actually call the borough and they'll come pick it up. So I want to say thank Rob and his team for providing extra service for the borough.
Okay. And just to know, we're pretty liberal today with the open public comment, but let's try to keep it to 3 minutes. All right. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Please.
but I don't know if I can talk fast enough for 3 minutes.
No, it's all right. I just 3 minutes. Try to.
Never know until you try.
Okay, I basically just need a clarification, because there's a lot going on here that some I agree with, some I don't agree with, but that what I need a clarification for is.
On name and address?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. My name's Patty Donovan. I live at 18 Lion Street. When you're talking about that shade tree, is that the same issue as when you talk about that you'll go onto people's property if they have a tree that's ugly or a neighbor that says it's not good, and you'll tell the property owner what to do?
No.
So in the ordinance that was passed tonight, this was sort of something that we already addressed in the fall, which is just public nuisance and health hazard trees. So not ugly, not the neighbor just doesn't like the tree.
Well, that's okay. I might not have
Right.
used that termination,
Yeah.
but my point is, can you legally go on somebody's property that they own
If it's a
and
threat to
tell
life.
them to do
Yes.
something with their tree?
Yes,
Okay,
but the way the ordinance is set up, if the tree's dangerous, it's a public nuisance, if it's diseased, we will notify you
okay.
and say, please take care of this, give you a time period. And if you fail to do it in a timely manner, the borough then has the right to enter your property, remove the tree, and then lien your property for the cost if you do not pay.
Okay, so here's another issue that I have. I mean, this isn't Hollywood here. I mean, there are some people that live here that are good people. I've lived here since '73. We stay here and we came here because of our kids and because what it had to offer for our children. So sometimes when you put that time frame on there, what happens if that person just can't cough up that money for that tree? I had a 75-foot pine tree in front of my house. It was this big when we moved in, and we kind of watched it grow. And it only got to be 75 feet 3 years ago. Now, I'm not an idiot. We live on a street that goes down towards Steuben Street. We knew 3 years prior to taking that down that number one, it was a pine tree, number one, it has shallow roots, and number two or three, if it fell, it would be on my neighbor's cars and on the front of their house. And homeowners doesn't take care of that. We knew all that, but we loved the darn tree because it faces the shopping center and it stopped all the snow from coming. Shopping center weather comes up from the shopping center. And in the summertime, it's our air conditioning. We don't have air conditioning. So it took me 3 years to say goodbye to that tree. And I did say goodbye to it because I knew it was better for us. But that tree cost almost $3,000 to take down with many offers for it. So, you know, I'm glad for your answer. I understand that totally. I'm not here to fight that. But I don't like how the person that maybe needs their building painted or this or that painted is just given an ultimatum. I think you have to be a little bit more, not lenient, I don't know what to say, like talk a little bit more. Don't just send something in the mail and say, bang, this is it, we're gonna get you.
Well,
I
that's-
see a
that's
lot
the-
of non-compassion here.
So that's the legal notification process. You have to be notified in writing. And the borough works with residents all the time on these issues, with extended time frames, with ways to, if you're having trouble coming up with the money, the borough will work with you. Anybody who receives a notice under any borough code, whether it's shade tree or it's property maintenance, if you need more time or you need more money or need time to get money, you should call the borough and talk it through. But you have to start the process through the legal writing. And you should know in advance. A lot of times our code officer will knock on your door or leave a door hanger about what's going on. So you should know. It should come as no surprise when you get the actual writing itself.
Oh, yeah, like if I would've got one for
But
my
it's not-
75-foot tree, yes. I
The
would
borough
have.
doesn't take a draconian approach to any of
But
this.
I might not have known, I have to tell you this, and I've lived here long enough. I might not have known, after I read that ultimatum, that I could call and barter for time. I might not have. I wasn't in that position, so I can't say that. I just think sometimes it's too cut and dry. You all are young. I've heard that you all want to make this a community even better than what it was. I could be your mother someday, let's face it, you know. But I think you need to like calm it down a little bit. Oh, are you saying you're young enough to be my child?
You're probably younger than my mom.
I can't be your mother.
If I may, I do want to comment because this kind of piggybacks off of what I was talking about with in response to Mr. Salva's comment. So I'm the borough manager, which, hi, I don't think we've met yet, but please call us anytime. You know, our code enforcement officer started a couple months before I did. Her name's Susan. She is extremely considerate when it comes to when she does go as far as to issue an actual notice versus just sort of a door hanger warning. I see her on the phone all the time with people that just have questions exactly like yours, or, you know, I understand my paint's peeling, it's kind of a burden, what can I do? As long as we have that line of communication open and it's not an immediate threat to somebody's health. Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
But they
and
don't know.
it's very rare to
Sorry,
not
but they
get
don't.
some sort of personal communication from her before there's any sort of enforcement action. And I know we've referred people to volunteer resources, we've referred seniors to kids that maybe can, you know, cut their grass for volunteer hours, or
I know,
working with the Boy
yeah,
Scouts.
I got
So,
that.
you know, all of those things are kind of under the same umbrella, as long as there is a line of communication, we're not here to be slapping on the wrist, we just kind of want to work together.
Well, and the other thing, and I promise, this is quick. I noticed 2 years ago, not on my street, because we're a dead end, there's 5 or 6 houses, but on the main street, off of my street, which would be Division, there is some rental cars there. And there is always garbage out there that the garbage men can't take. Couches, this, and this. So I started paying attention, and here it's people that move out of the apartments. So I did come to the Borough building, and I did speak to a young lady that has a very interesting name. Can't remember her name.
Charisma, probably.
And it doesn't matter, I didn't even need to bring that up. Then I said to her, actually, it's not the tenant's fault that they're leaving that mess. It's the landlord. The landlord is not finding out, if he never lived in Crafton, what the garbage, rules are, and passing that on to the tenant. So what I was told, which I knew this, because in 1973, when we moved here, we did have a welcoming committee. It was a bunch of very nice women that did their time and came and gave you coffee and gave you all the things. And she said, maybe you should really start something like that.
Well, we brought up the welcome wagon and bringing something like that back. So the first phase is, you have newsletters back up and running. The next phase is to make it very abundantly clear to everybody that this is a warm and welcoming community and that we want to work with everybody. And to your point about the nuisance tree ordinance, we had a overwhelming amount of public outcry last summer about nuisance trees, dead trees, and we took action. We heard that call, and so what you're calling for is make sure that we're acting in kindness and moderation to help everybody in the community. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. All right. I know this meeting's gone long in the tooth, Mr. Mayor, so I'm gonna, seeing that nobody else is jumping up with their hands up, does anybody else want to come up? I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. Meeting adjourned.